Hey everyone, LioConvoy here. As you all know, I have a heavy love for 80s cartoons. You know who else knows that? Jace. Yes, that Jace. You may recognize him as an occasional contributor to this channel for different live streams. Well, he hit me up several months ago to point me to this video done by Veritas Joe called Stop Pretending 80s Cartoons Had Better Character Design. He wanted my thoughts on it, and I decided it's best to do a video on it. It just took me nearly a year. Sorry about that, I'm late on just about everything due to my long-houred work schedule and other things I want to get out beforehand. So what does Joe have to say here, and how much of it is backed up by factual information or analysis? Let's find out. Also, real quick, I want to point out I am using gameplay footage on the background here. I wanted something a little bit easier, so this is what I'm going with for this specific video. I do not game for MLG strats. If you're going to come in and talk about how you think I can play better in XYZ, I just do this for fun, guys. I really don't care. So if you're going to come in here and try to critique my gameplay, you're missing the point, and I'm just going to make fun of you. Okay? Okay.
Different because quite frankly, I'm really tired of people pretending that every 80s cartoon looked fucking great. I can at least see the argument for early 2000s nostalgia and equality. And I do understand that people are nostalgic for things that people grew up with.
Yes, there are some 80s cartoons that struggled with their animation, but the continuing narrative that all, or even most, 80s cartoons were poorly animated is pure, well, fiction, and rarely spouted by anyone that knows anything about animation. There's nothing wrong with defending maligned shows, especially when those insulting claims do not come from a place of factual information. This isn't just about nostalgia. While some shows did have struggles, they weren't struggling all the time. Even Batman the Animated Series in the 90s, something even I call the best cartoon of all time, struggled and had some poorly animated episodes due to ACOM. Do I start judging the 90s as a whole based on that? No. Because that's foolish.
Look at this shit. If you really look at it, there is no way that you can say that this is a downgrade from this. Like design-wise, you gotta be smoking that pack.
I don't know Joe here very well, but a cursory look through his social media doesn't really tell me he's an artist. Wait, go back. Alright then, I didn't need to sleep tonight anyways. Back to my point, one fundamental aspect of art is that it is, by nature, subjective. While there are principles to it in things like color theory, perspective, composition, etc., what you enjoy or think is good is all purely subjective and up to each person. And frankly, I'll tell you I absolutely enjoy the original designs to the newer ones. An aspect of these older properties that no one ever wants to delve into is visual identity. One could argue that going from an art style closer to anatomic realism to something more cartoony is a downgrade, if anything. And no, I don't do drugs. The war on drugs programs during my childhood and a Vietnam vet father with a habit of testing my reflexes has drilled sobriety into the core of my soul. So there goes that too.
This started off on my Twitter feed as it usually does, but more importantly, this person tweeted out a thread of She-Ra characters, and each of them having the old and new designs. And they posted it with the caption of, "This is infuriating."
Ah, so this comes from Twitter. That makes sense to a point. I really can't chastise him for making a video because something on Twitter pisses him off. If I did, I'd have to go after the entire T-channel community. And I haven't. Yet. But of note is that this thread was done by Star Wars Girl. Certainly not someone I follow or a person whose stuff I enjoy. That being said, her getting upset or infuriated by these designs is a personal, subjective value. Not sure why that, specifically, would upset this guy.
Now, I'm pretty sure they were trying to prove a point, but if you look at all these designs, all of the old She-Ra designs are from the same mold. And you might ask, what do I mean from the same mold? Well, you see, in the 80s, toys were made, and then the toys were the designs for the cartoon. So that is why all of the protagonists and characters pretty much look the same, because they quite literally have the same mold.
No. No. Not all 80s cartoons started as toys and then became cartoons. That's factually incorrect, and more so incorrect with She-Ra. The character body types weren't similar due to toys, as they were developed separately from the show. I can illustrate this pretty easily too, and to be fair, I'll use toys themselves to do it. On the left is the vintage She-Ra toy, and the one on the right is the Super 7 Club Grayskull She-Ra toy that was based on the cartoon from the 80s. You should see by now how different they are in design. You could feasibly assume they're different characters altogether. The swords aren't even the same. The reason why the women had generally the same body was due to the animation budget, and the fact that Filmation used rotoscope for character animation. Along with that is the fact that He-Man and She-Ra come from sword and sorcery fantasy, where people are depicted at their physical peak. The body you see there was from a very real person that did all those movements on camera. It had absolutely nothing to do with the toys. This is why just regurgitating unsourced talking points is an issue, especially when you're a larger channel. Joe sits at 164 subs and spreads this misinformation, knowingly or not, and a 5K channel like mine has to try and fix it. I guess it's a good thing I like a challenge then. There's also the fact that there was body diversity in the original show.
In real life, the literal only thing that is separating these characters from looking the exact same is the clothes, accessories, and hair color.
There's also body language, facial features, personalities, and generally everything else. This is a very surface level criticism that doesn't actually look honestly at the material presented. Like, did Joe actually watch any of the cartoon, or did he just pull up Google image searches thinking he had a gotcha here? I genuinely would like to know.
But besides that, they all look the fucking same. Now I could see why an old-time She-Ra fan wouldn't like the new She-Ra if that's what they're used to. But to then say that it is infuriating to look at those designs, thus trying to dunk on them, you kind of set yourself up for failure because those are objectively more imaginative designs.
I don't know. Seems more like you're trying to dunk on the original show here by downplaying the work that went into the original in order to uplift the new one. Seems you set yourself up for failure there. And again, it's not objective. There's no such thing as objective in art preferences. But if you have some numbers to show how many production hours that went into the character designs for the new show, then we can talk.
They weren't made with the intent to sell toys. They were made with the intent to be appealing.
It always baffles me how many people talk about cartoons that decry shows that push merchandise as though it somehow makes them devoid of creativity. Toy designers, writers, and animators of that era had to be imaginative in order to make something that would reach the audience they wanted. I mean, did you ever wonder why people held on to these shows and characters a lifetime later? Because they were appealing to the kids at the time and had to engage the imaginations of them. The idea that this is all bereft of real imagination is asinine. If you can actually turn around and create a fully transformable toy all on your own, let me know. Then we'll talk about imagination. Furthermore though, Joe claims the new cartoon was made to be appealing. But it really wasn't. It was made because DreamWorks wanted to see if they could make money with the brand before it went to Universal. That show, like its predecessor, was made to sell things. And that's not just exclusive to toys. The show is open about pushing for diversity and inclusion. Not that these are inherently bad things, but it's dishonest to frame this new show as though it was solely made with some high artistic merit beyond the original. Especially when, frankly, the original did better than this one. 93 episodes over 2 years versus 52 episodes over 2 years. You tell me which one had the better pull in numbers. So appealing to whom exactly? Since it didn't seem to appeal to anyone other than a small minority of people. They couldn't even get the merch off the ground. That's baffling if this show is so high quality. What it did do was try to use its diversity as its main selling point. If that's the main hitch here instead of the quality of writing or animation, then I think it's safe to say your show needs some reworking. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong about diversity or inclusion, at all. But trying to use it as a gimmick both devalues the very people you're trying to appeal to and just shows that you're not really confident in your writing or your abilities as a content creator of any platform. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth of the matter here.
They also now were made to be more inclusive and diverse.
Is now a bad time to mention, yet again, that She-Ra, the original one, had diverse characters?
And I noticed that some people have a problem with that when they shouldn't. It's not virtue signaling to add diversity in your cartoon, it's just inclusive of all the people watching it.
It is virtue signaling though. Now hold up before you get mad. The difference is what people make of that virtue signaling. Every human being on this planet that's capable of communication virtue signals. Yes, even those of you watching this right now. If you ever have said, I'd never do that, or I'm against this thing, then guess what? You virtue signal. The difference comes down to being pharisaical about it. I don't think the new show does, but this is something I've seen that I've been wanting to comment on, and I think it's a good place to do so.
And that includes body inclusivity as well. You don't just have all skinny, buff, Amazoning men and women watching your cartoon.
Yeah, you didn't have them watching the original show either, so what does he think his point is? Because it's kind of dead on arrival. Again, these were rotoscoped from actual people. Let's go back to Spinnerella though. Do you really think this is inclusive of bigger people? You've got to be kidding me. This is how a coward handles this design. A bold claim? Sure, but I can back it up. This design actually got some pushback from bigger people as well. Want to know why? Because the largeness of her design magically ends at the base of her neck. Amazing that they didn't commit to the idea, isn't it? Heck, I did a redraw of her in her vintage outfit and actually made her larger all around. Is my art good? Heck no! But at least I'm not a coward and I know how to commit. Ask my wife about it sometime. Of note is that the original show didn't take the coward's route with the bigger characters either. You can't say that for the newer show.
Or kids that want to or can be those sizes. That's not how real life works.
Newsflash, genres called fantasy. It's meant to be unrealistic. send you my epic melody!
This one. Like, how can you say the one on the left is better? The one on the right is leagues more dynamic. At least there are more than 2 colors on the whole fucking outfit.
1. Define dynamic. 2. You're right. The new one has more than 2 colors. It has 3. Truly. This is an ascended art form compared to the original. You nailed it.
The person also complained about them switching the sexuality of the character, as if the sexuality has any, like, meaning within the story, or like a precedent that has to be set. There's no She-Ra has to be straight kind of thing. That doesn't really matter.
I generally don't care about changed sexualities either, for the most part. But you can't actually say it has nothing to do with the story, while showing a clip that shows it absolutely does. And you're right. There's no rule that says She-Ra has to be straight. But if she's going to be gay, could she, at the very least, not perpetuate that it's okay to be in a relationship with an abusive, destructive maniac? Plenty of girls in that show that she could have been written into having a thing for. Catra was the worst choice. There's some criticism of modern cartoons that are asinine, but one of them absolutely has bite. That of which is that they tend to push the idea that being in a relationship of any kind, looking at you, Steven Universe, with an abusive person is okay, so long as they go, ooh, I'm sorry, I can change. If the internet has taught me anything, it's that kids use characters like this as a roadmap for their own lives, and pushing this nonsense is setting themselves up for failure. Just write your garbage crack ships on fanfiction.net and stop putting them into official media, please, writers. I'm tired of it. There's also the fact that this argument goes both ways. This is a kid's show, remember? It's not aimed at either of us. So if it's weird that this guy cares, why isn't it weird that you do? Of note for the original Filmation cartoon, though, is that there was no way they would have gotten away with gay characters at the time. These shows were under constant fire by parents groups and even the government at the time. Hate to break it to you, but the landscape was completely different and far more restrictive on that end at the time. It seems no one takes that into account when talking about these old shows.
This person says, new cartoons are just the absolute worst. Some of the laziest, most unappealing character designs I've seen. Now, when you look at 5 of these character designs next to each other, and 5 of these, which group do you think put less time into coming up with their character design?
The new one. The new one absolutely took less time. Because with the original, you can actually track the revisions and design changes over the developmental stage. Here's one for She-Ra alone, and it's not even half of the designs they went through.
I say that I think the one that basically used the DeviantArt base for all their characters is the more lazy group.
Comparing rotoscoped animation to DeviantArt bases isn't just dishonest, it's absolutely stupid. I've already explained why. Joe here seems to have a problem with people dunking on the new She-Ra and has decided the best response is to dunk on the original, all while invalidating his own claims about the work that goes into these shows. You can't say in the same breath, be nice to this show, hard work went into it, and the old one is bad because you made fun of the new one and research is beyond me. That may fly with your viewership, but it won't fly here. But hey, you want to talk about the work that went into a show? Cool, we can do that. I have in my hands the original She-Ra story Bible. Want to guess how many pages it is? Nah, I'll just tell you. 97. 97 pages for this series. That's a lot of work for just character background and story info alone. Now, you'll ask how I know this took more work compared to the new one, as I clearly don't have the show Bible for the new one. Oh wait, I do. How did I get it? Fell off the back of a truck. And it also fell off the back of the truck in the comments sections. Oops! Use it responsibly. If you look at the show Bible, you'll find out that what the show wound up as is a severe departure from what we actually got. I'm sure a larger channel may want to take a look and pick through it, and they're welcome to. But back to my point, you know how many pages this story Bible for the new show has? 23. 97 versus 23. Don't try and come at me with this nonsense again, okay? Okay.
And also, like, this bitch is wearing a cloak. Like, if I can't see the imprint of her arms, why am I seeing the imprint of her chest? Is it just exclusively tight there? Oh, so that's what you guys are like. Great character design.
If you take issue with that character design, I'll ask that you learn how to expound on it and explain why. Just commenting on the fact that you can see breast outlines isn't really much of a criticism.
Someone also complained about kids' cartoons being relatable instead of being inspirational and teaching life lessons for real. Now, it might be hard to say this, but the only way of not being campy and having a little life message at the end of your video directly talking to the viewer like they're fucking 5 is having relatable characters going through situations that are somewhat realistic.
I mean, sure, if you're a hack writer, I guess that's true. The truth is you can put characters in any sort of bizarre and unrealistic situation and teach a greater moral without being campy. Media has been doing it for, a while now, but a lot of people, I guess, just aren't diverse in what they look at. You can glean morals like be grateful for life from a Solomon Kane story that has literal black magic, reanimated corpses, and crazy cultists. If you don't think it can be done in kids' media without being realistic or campy, then I think you're underselling the imaginations of others. If you look at fantasy and your first response is it needs to be more realistic, then I think you just need to pick up an engineering book and leave fiction alone.
That if you literally want a door to look at the camera and tell you to be a good person, that's not inspiration or teaching a life lesson. That's fucking Dora the Explorer.
Firstly, it's supposed to be for kids, remember? And 2 generations ago it worked just fine. I'm not saying things can't be improved upon, but you're missing the point that was trying to be made here. This person is essentially saying he doesn't get why so many characters have to be complete train wrecks instead of being something to aspire to. This isn't about She-Ra looking at the camera. This is about being an example and showing kids how to make good moral decisions. Or is this show suddenly not for kids anymore to fit the needs of the straw man you've created here?
These faces literally look the fucking same.
Hold up now, several of these shows are from the same studios and most are actually different from each other. This is just the CalArts argument for Zoomers, yet somehow managed to be dumber than the original. If you can't tell these faces apart, go to an art class. I am begging you. I mean, if you don't know that adult men's faces are more defined than children's, which is what the majority of children's media tends to have in it now, I can't help you. I can't. That's just something you should notice in real life.
Like, just say you're not a fan of diverse characters and leave. That's all.
Just say you didn't like the Twitter thread and leave. That's all. Amazing how people that state values like this somehow never seem to live by them. The original She-Ra was diverse, and so were the other images you showed. It's just all in the details, and people that make rants like this are bad about details.
Don't make this about the death of animation. You're welcome to like whatever cartoon era or decade you're from, or just have a liking to. But don't pretend like the new shit is lazy, because there ain't nothing lazy about this shit.
The writing is pretty lazy, my dude. It's why every discussion about this show eventually gets brought into nothing but inclusion and diversity, which again, isn't inherently bad. There's little about the story or characters to get into, that's the problem. The argument is rarely that animation, as it exists, is lazy now. The argument is that the medium did more with less 30 years ago, and this industry isn't where it should be. I talked about this in my Jellystone video, but animation from 30 years ago shouldn't be able to beat the pants off of modern stuff in any way. We should be at the point where every show is the same quality as the intro to Thundercats. But we're not. And you need to, especially with the size of your platform, start asking why. Now, I don't have a personal issue with Joe. I just wish he'd have looked into this topic more instead of just getting angry at a Twitter thread dunking on a show he likes and then take it all out on the original show. I'm not even going to say I hate the new She-Ra. I've defended it before it came out and saw 1 season of it before I decided it didn't really interest me, and subsequent discussions with those that have seen it confirmed that decision was not wrong for me. These 80s cartoons have more depth to them than a lot of people want to think, and had a ton of work and imagination put into them. That's why brands keep trying to reboot them and why they're remembered so well years later. Anyways, go watch the original She-Ra. Or if you want something more modern, go watch Green Eggs and Ham. It's wonderful, and I highly recommend it. Frankly, I'm tired of so many people going on and on about Filmation or Hanna-Barbera being lazy or terrible or cheap. Those 2 companies kept television animation alive in the States for decades until the 80s. That ought to earn them just a little bit more respect than people are giving them. And frankly, I'll take them over Class B Shippo stuff any day. And now I will sit back and wait for my obsessive social media stalkers to try and spin this into me somehow hating the LGBT and minorities when I said nothing of the sort. This is about the reality of how shows are made and why. Nothing more. If you can't see the actual points being made here, I recommend you just, I don't know, get a job or something? Or a decent hobby? Better than being an obsessed lunatic on the internet. Special thanks as always goes to my patrons. If you like what I do here, feel free to follow the link in the description to support me. You're also welcome to join my community Discord, or you can just follow the channel. You're all adults according to my analytics, so you know what to do. I'm LioConvoy. Take care.